Thank you, the Korean Film Festival of Canada, for having me. And also thank you everyone for all the panelists that were talking before. Okay, bear with me because I am a dinosaur, so I have my papers here. So, so people probably know my work through principally like books like these ones that were published in French or in English. Or also awareness campaigns surrounding gender and race and immigration themes and surrounding community too. But lately, so since about like 2 years, I've been transitioning much more in research, specifically doing research creation. So basically, instead of creating full-time illustration, what I do is that I spend full time on thinking about what illustration does to our imaginary collectively and individually. And specifically for me, it's like an excuse to kind of like dig down into my own story, my family story. So I've always been drawn to the questions of how to inherit or transfer knowledge when we're dispossessed from the mother tongue. What to speak of when silence takes a much greater space than words, and how to trust memories when living with collective amnesia. So I published this first article lately about illustration as a vessel to access portals of sound memory, a culture of hope in the making, the Cambodian case. So to put you a little bit in context before talking about my research creation work is that I was born in 1987 as a Cambodian kid in Canada from my parents that are survivors of the Khmer Rouge regime. So they went through the regimes and they survived, they migrated to Canada, but they have a completely different experiences because they met in Canada. So they migrated in 1979, my mom, and 1980, my dad. So it means that I was born from 7 to 8 years just after the genocide. So since I was really young, even though I didn't have like the critical vocabulary to explain it or to question myself, I was always wondering about like how to live with this like dilemma of being born through love, but also tragedy in the same time. So how to live through that also. So I've always been like drawn with a lot of questions. And so when I was really young, I was like always in my head. So illustration has like drawing for me has always like a way to kind of comfort me. So that's why I like to use illustration to kind of like dig down into the trauma specific of Cambodians. So to put you more into context, the genocide is, I mean, the Khmer Rouge regime is, the Khmer Rouge killed the third of the population of Cambodia, so 2.5 millions and 7 millions. And people that survived, some of them, they stayed in Cambodia, some of them, they were like dispersed into different geographical localization in Canada, United States, Australia, and France. And the trauma has many layers because the genocide was perpetrated by the Khmer Rouge, but also, so their own community, but also before that, there was a French colonization. And before that, there was the occupation by Thai people, Vietnamese, and later on the United States. So it's a complicated trauma. So I really grew up with the culture of silence in my house, like a lot of Cambodians that I know. So my work is about using illustration to kind of like build images that were destroyed, because the Khmer Rouge, they also make disappear all the archives. It means that they destroyed all the vinyls, all the movies, they burned everything, and they also killed all the artists. So I basically grew up with complete like an absence, like zero representation, and also distortion of representation, because I grew up with Chinese drama movies series, but translated into Cambodian, thinking it was my Cambodian culture. So my work specifically was to imagining what would look like the best of vinyls of the Cambodian rock and roll musicians of the 60s and 70s if they were still alive. And it's really political because, for example, Panran on the left side, she sang about sexual liberation in the 60s, which was really revolutionary. And she was extremely, like, her body was really round also, and she was really embracing her physical look. Since Samud was someone that was mixing the traditional and the modern music together. So it's really, really political. So basically, by recreating those images, it's a way to kind of like meet the other generation that is older, that are survivors, and that bring them good memories that are not necessarily the tragedy. So suddenly they open up about good memories when they were young and the music they grew up with. So this is basically my work. This is the first part. And I can talk later on my work, but I also wanted to talk about my journey. So what brought me here, because sometimes I sincerely think that when we use art as a language, it can really open a lot of doors, especially when we, like me, we speak the settlers' language, and I don't really have all the skills to speak my mother tongue language. So it can be intimidating, I think, to kind of like wonder how to enter the professional world and like do this as a living. So I wanted to share my journey. So basically, it's 17 years in the making, and it was really an accident for me to be an illustrator. I really wanted to be a filmmaker, but then for different reasons, I just went with what I had in hands, which was paper and crayons. So I studied in fine arts, and my parents they do sewing as a living, like many Cambodians, because the sewing production sector was really developed a lot by Cambodians, starting in the end of the 80s. And so about like 16 years ago, I started like this experiment with clay and cast and a lot of textile, because it reminded me of my parents working with the machines. And then I used to do a lot of photography also, because I think it's due to the fact that all the photographies were burned. My mom, she bought this camera when the year I was born, and she kept on like photographing us all the time. So after, when I went to Cégep while doing fine arts, I was also doing a lot of photography, black and white. So then I started to mix photography with the collage and the textile. And I became the finalist for a Quebec Fine Arts contest. And so I was really happy about it. And so this was about like 16 years ago. I wanted also to show this because the collection of fine arts that I just showed you kind of like lead me to Cambodia, because I was born here and I was really afraid to go to Cambodia. And when I was doing the creation of the fine arts I showed you, the artwork, I was also doing a lot of experimentation, and later on I found out like there was a lot of symbols of planes, wings like birds, and on the right side you can see pieces of maps, because I was really looking for my own path and to kind of fly away and like build my own narrative without the gaze surrounding me. So this brought me to Cambodia after the first time in 2008. So I went there, I visited where my mom was born, where my dad was born, and it was really touching, and it was a strong experience that lasted 7 months. So Cambodia became kind of like my home, but a different Cambodia than my parents. So this is where I discovered that it's possible to have not just one reality, but different realities and different truth with a big S. And coming back to now, my work, like I said, it's kind of like to dig into the archives that were really erased and like to bring them back to light. So this is the same method, but with really personal archives. So I use the photography of my family. So you can see on the left side, these are photos of me and my parents since I was really young. So I don't remember what happened, but I often look at the album. So it kind of like helped me to re-narrate my own story. And I did a collage, and then I made this like experimental mural, to be, I hope, of like my family's story merging with the Cambodian history also. You can see all the different civilization and a lot of semiotics that kind of like make those people speak, telling about the foods they used to eat when they were younger and stuff like that. So to finish, I also wanted to show you how all this process lead me to the work that I do now by merging the research and the creation, is to add a bigger critical component to my work, specifically about the white supremacy, but also how food is resistance and how such images can bring back oral history. So to me, illustration is really a bridge for personal and generational renovation. Thank you.